welcome back to the SCAYLE Debate, where smart people try to make sense of data that's been trolling us since 2003. Last week, Lee Trotter made it 2 in a row on a streak that hasn't been seen since Matt Ezyk had a 17 handicap on a golf course. But it's getting a little more serious this week as we're wondering who can dismount Lee Trotter riding in on his Canadian high horse. Today's big question is simple. Why have conversion rates and performance been so transient for 2 decades? It seems to me with all the investments that have happened in e-commerce, there should be more we can expect. And as a reminder, this is the 4th debate in a series of 10 debates that are planned throughout the rest of the year. We've been through 3 already. And as I mentioned, Lee has 2 of those victories. We have generally a debate each week throughout the rest of the year. Sourced from Speed Commerce and Digital Commerce 360, we have essentially conversion rates between 1.5% and 2.5%, really for the past 2 decades. With the brief exception of the total shutdown and COVID, which obviously gives us a little bit of a reprieve there. It's not an exact science, but we're here to unpack the views of 5 experts on why conversion rate and performance has been so transient for 2 decades. As a reminder, our debate today is sponsored by SCAYLE, which is the e-commerce platform that is built for enterprise retail. Re-platform in under 7 months, launch new markets in minutes, and execute on your most ambitious promotions fast, without any more bottlenecks, any more pain, just a platform that really works. Thank you again for SCAYLE for sponsoring these debates. We really appreciate you. My name is Rick Watson. In case you missed it, I'm here as your referee, narrator, part-time shit talker. Let's see who in this debate is actually bringing the insights and who's just kind of on the sidelines, just talking about the dashboards. At the end of the day, conversion is a moving target, and conversion from every visitor on your website isn't necessarily your goal. If you're a brand website, if you have a PR campaign, conversion rate is going to go down because people are just going to come to the site to see who you are. But if you have high intent traffic coming to your site, particularly for a sale, promotion, and during the times of the period where it really matters, including Black Friday, Cyber Monday, which is coming up, conversion rate is super important, and things like shipping price, your customer experience, and your platform can really matter. Up first, we have our 5 debaters, but in particular Matt Ezyk, who is already limbering up for a 100-meter sprint through customer expectations. Let's have this come up now.
Yeah, conversion has always been a moving target. I think that's because customer journeys never sit still. Customer expectations evolve faster than these tech investments that we see. So conversion rate is distorted by things like attribution shifts in devices and channel mix, et cetera. So incremental conversion optimization won't move metrics without having the operational rigor and excellence to go alongside it.
Yeah, Matt tells us it's not just about the platform itself. It's not just about your little CRO activities that will move the metrics. You need real operations behind it, meaning how are you setting customer expectations? How do you reinforcing customer expectations in the customer journey? Are you delivering on time? Do you have a great return experience? All these things go into conversion rate optimization, and as a result, and I think ultimately what he's trying to say, that just having a better performing checkout can't carry your entire business on its back. It's not going to run itself. So thanks, Matt, for that strong opening. Basically, if your ops are chaos, your conversion rate is just kind of telling the time out there. Next up, we have Rob Garf, proving again that retail strategy requires actually kind of a minor in international relations. Let's see what he has to say.
Well, conversion rate and retail performance overall is not in a vacuum, right? And so we have to understand the consumer. We have to understand the retailer. We need to understand the geopolitical outlook, not just in our country, but globally. And so you think about it, just the shock to the system as an example that COVID had, that significantly changed conversion. People went to a website because they didn't have any other option if it wasn't essential products. And in many cases, they buy. So you look at the curve and it was an exponential growth that was not sustainable. So you have to kind of look at the factors, not just in the vacuum, but in totality. The other piece of conversion I think is really important is conversion is only one equation. I'm actually encouraging a lot of people I'm talking to is thinking about customer profitability. Customer profitability keeps in mind that a shopper traverses, based on research that I've been doing for a long time, almost 10 different touch points in any given shopping experience. Think about that, 10 different. Now, if you're buying milk, maybe it's one, but if you're looking for a new couch, it's probably 15, both online and offline. Offline and online, I forget which one I said, but both of them, omni-channel. And so I think about conversion in isolation by channel is fool's gold. It's not going to get you the answer you want. Understanding customer profitability and how they're traversing and what attribution by touch points and when is really the winner and help you gauge more engagement and long-term profitability.
It's an interesting debate by Rob. I mean, first of all, bringing up geopolitical in a conversation about conversion, I'm going to throw the flag. Ultimately, what I find is if you're a CEO and you're talking about the macroeconomic factors that are affecting your business, then that CEO is going to get fired within a year because they don't understand the fundamentals of their business, the inputs that actually produce great outputs. On the other hand, COVID is a thing, and the macro does affect things like profitability and performance. And then Rob goes to change the behavior and the conversation a little bit from conversion into customer profitability, which is, a fair point, but it doesn't necessarily answer the full question. So sometimes conversion is dropping is maybe it's just because civilization is having a moment and everything is shut down. Thanks, Rob, for your contribution. In terms of our next debater, we have Suze Dowling, who is a one-time winner here. She is armed with calm authority, and let's listen to what she has to say.
I don't know that I would agree with this, and I'd challenge that premise. I think conversion rates themselves aren't inherently volatile. I think what's been more volatile is our ability as operators to really keep pace with customer expectations, right? Things are changing day by day. If we kind of go back, say, 20 years, which is scary to say, if we go to, say, 2005, free shipping would be like so revolutionary to your conversion. Fast forward to then like 2010, 2-day shipping is then the new baseline. By 2015, it's okay, now we've got this seamless mobile checkout. Today, it's probably one-click payment or personalized journeys or insanely quick, load times. So I think if a brand says conversion is collapsing or, is stagnant, I think what they're really saying, and they just may not want to admit it to themselves, is we've fallen behind the new baseline. The customer hasn't changed, but their expectations have risen. And if you don't keep up, I think your numbers will look unstable there. I think the second factor that really plays into this is just economics, right? Like, again, I think in the early days, paid social was so cheap and the intent was high, and you could throw money at Facebook with little rhyme or reason and just like watch the orders roll in. It was like the heyday of D2C. And that's so not the world that we live in right now. And I think that, it's the bidding is expensive. Targeting can be a little fuzzier with especially all of the privacy changes. And I think it's not that the customer is less willing to buy. I think it's that there's some inputs that got a little bit worse. And so conversion can look kind of choppy because not because I'd say like the demand itself disappeared, but because the mix of traffic that we're maybe feeding into the funnel has shifted. And then I think it's also, we need to look at a business as, how do you keep a business stable? You know, I think a lot of the time we're pouring energy into top of funnel, acquisition. And I think a lot of the time we're then underinvesting in CRO and retention and trust. And when I think about the basics of kind of the e-commerce equation, right, at its most simple form, like revenue equals like traffic times AOV times conversion, and like conversion is one of the most impactful there. And so I think about what we call like a stability stack, which is the first thing of the stack is trust signals. So fast sites, clear returns, like proof that your brand will deliver. I think the second thing is the retention mechanics. So loyalty programs, referral loops, subscriptions that make the revenue predictable. That's always a dream. And then I think the third and perhaps one of the most important is that kind of thought of continuous CRO. So it's not a one-off project. I think it's a culture of testing and iterating every day, every week, every month. And I think that when those three things in the stack are in place, you don't feel the same kind of whiplash necessarily from what's happening with, price hikes or algorithm shifts. You're really having these stabilizers that are just built into your system and help create this sense of balance and harmony. And I think again, life and business isn't one with these hacks, right? It's not like you're on a roller coaster and that's a fun thing where you want to be up one quarter, down the next, and it's the problem of an agency or paid media or, the platform. I think you kind of want to be a little boring in business. Like boring is good in business. And so I think that kind of idea of the stability stack, trust, retention, continuous CRO, that's what lets you scale with confidence. And I think that that's what, customers crave and want and expect. So, I think for the 5-second answer to this, it's like conversion itself isn't necessarily transient. I think the commitment doesn't come from these short-term tricks. It comes from really building these foundational stable things that compound trust over time.
Suze really, in my opinion, delivers almost an e-commerce masterclass here. She says so much to unpack in a short amount of time. The e-commerce stability stack, that's a concept I've never even heard of, where she talks about trust, retention mechanics, and continuous CRO as being foundational. She starts out really with talk about like if a company's conversion is collapsing, what's really happening is probably they're falling behind consumer expectations. And if there's anything that I learned from Jeff Bezos throughout of his career in building Amazon is he always talked about the divinely discontent consumer, meaning if you think you've solved consumer expectations, then just wait a month. Expectations are going to get higher, which means your delivery speeds need to not be stable. They need to be improving. Your performance, your website needs to continually be improving. Your prices need to be sharp and competitive. And your site needs to be easy to use. And so all those things are important. Suze also goes on to talk about demand channels. And I think it's particularly true because as a new channel comes online and reaches sort of like early proof points to scale, there's always a period where early adopters can take full advantage of the economics of that channel before it gets over-consumed. And she talks about the rise of paid social. I kind of feel like micro-influencers are having that moment a little bit now where it's known as a good tactic, but it hasn't fully been over-consumed to the extent that prices are stratospheric. And those times you can find those early demand channels can really influence your performance. So thank you, Suze. I certainly even just learned a lot from this. Next up, we have the cultural e-commerce master himself, Dave Finnegan, talking to us about shopper trade-offs and how long profitability can last.
I think conversion rates have been squirrely for some time. It's because it's not a static metric. It's a moving, cultural target. For 20 years, retailers have been measuring the ritual changes each time a new tech changes. And so conversion rates doesn't adapt to pop-ups or personalization or one-click checkout or new social shopping behavior. I guess the short answer from my perspective is conversion rates haven't been stable because shopping isn't stable, and it hasn't been stable for 20 years. We shouldn't be measuring, okay, how many people bought during that session. Instead, we should be thinking about and measuring how did the experience deliver on the journey that the customer's on each time. I think about my experience at Orbis, and we had content, for example, on fly fishing and how to fly fish. And by driving people to the site or encouraging them to take fly fishing lessons online, it would decimate our conversion. And so we started having to think about it more from how are we helping the customers interact with our brand and their shopping, their full shopping experience, their full brand experience, and not just did they buy from us.
I love how simple Finn's message is here, which is conversion rate moves up, conversion rate moves down. Get over it, people, because it's a moving target, and Dave really keeps it simple for us all. And simplicity, I think it's definitely something we need in this this complex world we have. And so, wise words from Dave. Now, up for the reigning champ, we have Lee Trotter. 2 wins, 1 calm demeanor, 0 ego. Can he make it 3? Let's hear from Lee.
For conversion rates being transient, this is just looking at society. Society has been transient for 2 decades, right? You look at when the initial revolution of the smartphone came out, how did that change how we communicated, right? And then you look at onward, it went from desktops to mobile first, and it just didn't go us forcing mobile first. It actually became mobile first, where people preferred to work off the phone. As old as I am, I actually go to the phone first now most of the time for anything that I'm researching and looking at, and you look at how society has changed. So to say conversion rates are going to remain the same, that's a foolish narrative to look at. You have to look at what is changing in the world, and that constant change is evolving. You have to change how you are interacting with your customers to ensure that your conversion rates remain high, right? And sometimes that changes how you have to measure your metrics, because your metrics are going to change. If you're suddenly looking at new channels and you don't know how to measure the success of that channel, are you being successful in that channel? Well, you don't know, right? So, the ideal state is to actually be ahead of the curve and be the one setting the trends for what that new conversion rate is going to be, or what that new buying flow is going to be. But most companies are actually the ones playing catch up when that comes in.
Now, Lee is actually really good at reminding us, if you're not ahead of the game, then you're behind. And so you're either the hammer or the nail in e-commerce. And I think over the past few years, a lot of us feel like the nail and not so much the hammer. So ultimately, I think these are brave words from Lee, especially in an industry that measures everything in 30-day windows. And so thanks for your contribution, Lee. Obviously, the jury is going to be out here for everyone to decide. And so that's a wrap on episode 4 of the SCAYLE Debates, where every answer sparks 100 new dashboards. We've learned that conversion rates don't live in isolation. They live in chaos. They live in geopolitics, quarterly panic, and sometimes we just need to deal with it. 5 contenders. We have 1 reigning champion. And ultimately, at this point, who's going to win? We are going to start the voting right now. Definitely tell us who you feel won the debate. Was it Matt? Was it Dave? Rob? Suze? Or Lee? Lots of great answers. There can only be 1 winner, just like there's only 1 ring in Lord of the Rings. Why am I talking about Lord of the Rings? Nobody knows, but you're here listening to me. That I can be happy with. If you haven't voted yet, get in your vote. Alrighty. We have a winner and new champion, Matt Ezyk. It seems like this crowd was into simplicity today, and that was definitely Matt's message for us, which means that no metric moves in isolation. Consumer journeys, they don't sit still. It will always be a moving target. It's almost like Matt is saying, this is a dumb question. I work in e-commerce. I am prepared for chaos 24/7. And that's probably a good message for all of us today, especially if we're expecting our platform to solve our problem for us. We need to look beyond that. We need to look at our solid operations built on top of, hopefully, a solid technology platform as well. So really appreciate everyone coming out today. I'm Rick Watson, reminding you that while performance may be transient, opinions are forever. And so thank you again for joining us in this debate. See you next week, where we'll probably overanalyze something else, and you'll see if I make any new strange references that you're not expecting. But all in the name of progress. Thanks again for watching.